Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 83. Today's June 16th, 2023. I almost said 1958 because that's the day I was born, June 16th, 1958. So today's my birthday. And I'm Emilie Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where so I'm recording earlier in the day, which means the light is different behind me. There's some glare off of the screens in the windows, which I do sometimes wonder why we have screens, because we open the windows 6 times a year only, because it's either too hot or too cold or too much pollen or whatever. But yes, different earlier in the day. I have a kind of a busy day. I've had a busy week, which is lovely. I believe in celebrating early and often, and my friends have learned this over the past 65 years, that's what I like. So I've had some celebrations and other normal activities this week. And I'll say more about that maybe later. Maybe, who knows what I'll say. Now I will say that I think I have a lot to talk about today, and I hope I don't forget things, and some of it's written down. We'll see. Cross stitch. Flosstube. The Flosstube part means cross stitch usually, and the variety show means something else. So I try to show my full coverage pieces alternatingly. So last week I believe I showed Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather. This week I'm showing my other full coverage piece, which is Tiger Stare. It's a snippet variety and it's by Charting Creations. And I'm doing this on 18 count Aida in the color Sand by Zweigart. It's not an overdyed, it's one of their colors. And you can see that I decided I'm continuing with the just doing the black. And now that that eye is fully there, I am so tempted to stitch the eye to, fill it in. But for now, I'm going to try to resist that temptation. In order to make my way across with black, there's no black on the lower part for quite a while. So I have to go up here and then make my way over here. And there's a lot of counting, and I'm not gridded over there, which when I come to stitching the other colors, I think I will have to grid. Mainly because there's so many colors, it's hard to discern them in order to be sure I'm getting my next color in the right spot. But I think for the black, I might not have to grid. We'll see. If I feel uncertain, then I may stop on the black and just go back and start working on the other colors on this half of the face. But I'm excited about that. Between last time I showed this and today, I did south of the eye. I finished the eye socket and did that part south of it. And I did those 2 little sections up in the upper part of the face. 1,000 stitches, just over, maybe even 1,100 stitches. It's just amazing how many stitches full coverage has in it. And this is not as big full coverage as some of them are. It's much smaller than Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather, which is my other piece. So that was fun to work on. And you'll see a little bit as I'm about to show you the next thing. This is Sampler 193 by 2x2 Stitch Art. Oh, no, I'm not doing this right. I have so much stuff around, I have to put things where I plan to, or I won't be able to move on. Here's where I am. I've continued working down into the lower section below where I had finished the quadrant. And I've been doing a lot of fill-in. I call this, and I call the black on the Tiger, more fill-in style stitching because it doesn't require as much thought. If I'm only doing one color, it's just easier. And the reason that I've been doing that this week a lot is because I've been listening to Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, which I talked about last week, because it was our book club selection for this month, and I needed to finish listening to it so that I could participate in the discussion, which I really enjoyed it. The Audible version, I think, was free, and it was very well done. This is Mathilde from the Letters from Europe box that Nicola put out. This is the first one of that selection that I've been doing. And I think that I had not finished the large bold alphabet and I hadn't gotten into the blue. So I managed to get to the blue and put in those two little people, one blue thread. And I worked on the borders some, and I started the bold lowercase alphabet and got down to the first band below that. So once I finished that bold alphabet, then the only other thing I have is bands, except for the cartouche with her name. So I'm working over here. And I have gone down, I would estimate, I haven't counted, but I would estimate that the border there that I've finished on this side is close to the bottom of it. That's close to as far down as it goes. But I really have enjoyed this. Again, even though there's a lot more attention needed to it because it's, you know, not big block stitching. It's all one, mostly I worked in red, so that was one color. Emilie Kalwar, again, a Hands Across the Sea pattern. I'm doing this on 18 count Aida white clay by Fox and Rabbit. Oh, that other one, this, Mathilde. This is 20 count Aida by Tabby Cat in the color Just the Ticket, which I like that a lot. I like this too. White clay. And I did this border here. And it's interesting because that border has two colors in it that aren't anywhere else. Maybe all three aren't anywhere else. So I'm really glad I'm doing this in Aida and I didn't buy silk and then discover I only need, you know, a few yards of higher cost silk thread, but it's really nice. I think you can see here I have 1, 2, 3 more bands and then her name and then finishing the border. And so this is pretty close to, I mean, it's not close to done. There are thousands of stitches to go, but in the scheme of things, it's close to done. And so I enjoyed working on that, and I didn't actually work on that as much as I wanted to. I thought I might do this other border, this next border thing that's on the same level as that this week, but I didn't because it took more effort than I could expend, or more mental effort than I could expend, and still listen intelligently to the Moonstone. By the way, in case anybody's following along at home, our next book will be Horse by Geraldine Brooks, which is a fairly new book. And I don't know how many of my book club members are watching this video, but you may need to get on your library reserve list really soon. Okay, books is not the variety show today. Today, the variety show is games. And I love games. And it's my birthday, so games is a really good topic because I enjoy playing games, and usually I can talk somebody into playing games with me on my birthday. And I think today will be no exception to that. But I wanted to talk about a particular category of game, which are a game which has a complicated version and a simple version, or sometimes that's more accurately described as a multiplayer version and a two-player version. And so I have some examples that I'm going to use to talk about what makes a game good, in a way, or in my opinion. So the most complicated game, I think, that I'm going to show today is Puerto Rico. And this is I mean, it's amazingly popular among the people that it's popular with. And it's popular with a lot of people. It gets high ratings on things like Board Game Geek, and you can go on all of these games. The best way I would recommend learning more about them than I'm going to say today is to go on YouTube and search for game introductions for these games, and I'm pretty sure they all have them. But Puerto Rico is a complicated game involving an awful lot of little cardboard pieces and little wooden discs and other little wooden things, and it's nice. The production value is very nice. And we have played it a lot. My husband and I, and a friend in particular, have played it a lot. And the thing that is good about this game is that because it's complicated, there are a lot of paths to playing it, a lot of strategies possible in the game. But the thing that we have discovered in playing it over the years that we've played it, the three of us together, is there's really one really sure victory, and the other, whoever adopts that path, the other player's goal needs to be to prevent them from being successful at that. And that becomes less interesting. And so some people accuse me of being a game collector, and if you've watched my videos for very long and you see how many times I talk about games and how many different games I show you, you may think that that's a true accusation, but it isn't really. And Puerto Rico is a game that is probably going to be leaving my collection sometime soon. But Puerto Rico has another game that's related to it, which is the game San Juan, and where Puerto Rico has all these cardboard things and wooden things. San Juan only uses cards. Oops, it's upside down. It has a lot of the same idea. It feels the same as Puerto Rico in many ways, but it is a much simpler game. And because it's only cards, it's easier to set up and carry around and that kind of thing. And also, Puerto Rico has to have 3 players, and San Juan can be played with as few as 2. It can be played with more also. How many? 2 to 4 players. And we're not going to get rid of San Juan, because San Juan is a game that we enjoy, and there are more ways to... The ways to win are more balanced. And therefore, it doesn't become all the players against the one player who's picking the best way. So now I'm going to go off camera or lean over here to get some more games. Yeah, you see I have a lot of games. Try to get that out of view a little bit. So Settlers of Catan, or Settlers of Catan, depending on how you say it. I think Catan seems to be the way most people say it. Just wondering where I'm going to put these as I finish with them. We'll see. If we have a big crash, then that'll be the most entertaining video that I've put out. Settlers is a very well-known game. It was probably the first of the, what I'll call German strategy games that became popular around the world. And it is extremely popular, and among people who love it, it is their favorite game. And I've played it. I haven't played it in the 5 to 6 player version, but I've played it with 3 or 4 players, which is how the original set is set up. You can't play it with 2, I don't think. They may have a kludgy way to play it with 2, but it's designed for 3 or 4 players. And what we found about playing that, it's a game with tiles, and you use little wooden houses to represent villages and bigger houses to represent cities, and you're building roads with little wooden pieces and so forth. Cards, and you're collecting victory points is the way that game works. And what we have found about that is that if you get good starting position on the map, then you will probably win. And if you are the third player to place your pieces on the map, you will probably be the loser. And if you get blocked in any way, if one player purposefully or unintentionally blocks you in, it can be, you won't get anywhere. So there's some flaws with that game. But again, it is the first and still probably most popular of the German strategy game type games. Well, there is a card game version of it. And some advantages of the card game version are, look, it's much smaller. The Settlers box is big and it requires a table that you set all that you create the board on using the pieces. So this is just cards. Each player does need an area of the table about like this to set up their cards. And it's cards and dice. There's dice that you roll that indicate what resources produce on each turn. And it's still a victory point game. It's still possible to get behind and not be able to catch up in it. But it is specifically for 2 players, and it's very well balanced for 2 players. And the different ways that you could choose to win the game are fairly balanced. So this game I really like. Settlers, the board game, I'm not going to get rid of my copy because I enjoy it, and under certain circumstances I can get other people to play it with me. But it is not as good. It's not the favorite that the Settlers of Catan card game is. So this is a good adaptation. San Juan is a good adaptation. So another game I'm going to talk about, I didn't bring it out because I'm already going to be heaped up to here with games, it feels like, is Ticket to Ride. Now, if you've played Ticket to Ride, if you've played board games or been to a game store, you probably, or even Target and places like that, you probably have seen Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is a very good board game. Its sweet spot, I think it's for 3 to 5 players, and maybe it's for 2 to 5 players. Maybe 2 can play. Yes, 2 can play. And its sweet spot is probably 3 players in terms of there being enough competition and enough latitude, but not too constraining. It is possible to get locked out of things in that game. But it's a train game. You're collecting collecting cards, which give you the ability to put trains on a map, and you're trying to connect the cities on your ticket cards to each other. It takes, an hour maybe for a 4-person game to play it, which is not bad. That's a pretty good length for a game. There was a card game version of it that was created that I had to have when it came out because, as other people say, I'm a game collector. I say I'm a game player, and I was hoping that it would have the same value and the same connection to Ticket to Ride that this has to Settlers, but it just wasn't good. It was hard to even figure out what your strategy ought to be, and it was, I think, a 2-player card game, and so I played it once or twice with one of my main game playing friends, Anne, and then I got rid of it. I've already gotten rid of it. It's gone. Now, I've mentioned 7 Wonders before. 7 Wonders is a game for 3 to 7. Oh, 2 to 7 players. Wonder how 2 players play this. Well, it's interesting. I would have always assumed 3 players, but apparently 2 can play it. There must be a sort of a fake 3rd player that's included. This has a lot of things that recommend it. It is a discrete game, as in it ends. There's a clear ending point, and it's simultaneous turn, so you don't have to wait for somebody else to take their turn before you can take your turn. So this is a very good game. It's a lot of pieces and things like that, but it's okay. It's worth it. Now, 7 Wonders has a game version, which is called Duel, and this is specifically for 2 players. And it does have some pieces that aren't cards, but mostly it's cards. And you lay them out in a certain series of layout, what do they call them, tableaus, which affect how quickly you can get at cards in order to be able to purchase them with your resources and put them in play. And this is a good game. This is, even if you'd never played Seven Wonders, this game would be an enjoyable game. So this is a great add-on or adaptation of Seven Wonders into a smaller form factor for just 2 players. It can only be played with 2 players. And finally, the final one I'm going to show you is the game called Power Grid. Now, I heard about this game a few years before I got it. And this is a complicated game. It has a lot of pieces and wooden pieces and discs and cards of different shapes. I guess they're mostly square. Here's what the back looks like. We played this in particular with another couple, and the wife of the other couple was guaranteed to win, but not because she adopted a strategy that the rest of us couldn't adopt. It just is, she's very brilliant at this type of game. And we enjoyed it. You know, we all, I think, enjoyed playing it. It has enough scope, and even if one person is in the lead, you don't feel that you're powerless. Haha, power grid, get it? But it is a turn-taking game, so you have to wait for the other players, and I think it's for, 2 to 6 players, and it says on the outside here 2 hours. So I would say many games nowadays will say how long it takes per player. So if you have the 2-player, if you're playing with just 2, it's going to be a shorter game than if you're playing with 4. This game, I don't think we ever took 2 hours. Maybe when we were first learning it, we did. But I think even when we played as 4 players, it didn't take 2 hours to play the game. But it also says ages 13 and up, which I think that probably makes sense. So anyway, complicated board game style game, a lot of pieces. And then there is I'm sorry, I just can't leave this in this pile. The 2-player, no, it's not a 2-player, it's a 2 to 6 player card game version of it. And of course, this is another thing I thought, well, Power Grid is a good game. We like it, and probably the card game version would be good. And it's not as good. This is one where it isn't as good. It is just cards, I think. Yeah. And the mechanics of it are good, but it just is a little complicated, as I recall. Now, I haven't played it in a while because we didn't love it. But it's 2 to 6 players, ages 13 and up, and it does say 60 minutes. So this is not a great one. And possibly I'll be getting rid of this game. But I'll keep Power Grid, the big game, even though it's hard to picture me talking anybody into playing it now that other couple that we played with have moved away. So in sort of summary, I think that, as I've said before when I've talked about games, you have to know your audience. And you have to know, for us older folks, you have to know the time of day. We don't try to teach a game if it's after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, really. Certainly, it's hard to teach a game in the evening, especially a complicated game, because we don't have the brain power late at night. We also tend to not teach a new game if we've had wine for dinner or beer, because you have to have your wits about you to learn a new game, especially a complicated one. Some complicated games have spin-offs. Sometimes the spin-offs are good, but not always. And sometimes the spin-offs are better than the complicated version. I think that the best way to learn about board games is to go on YouTube. Now, Board Game Geek is a website that you can sign up for free to get reviews and sometimes gameplays and rules clarifications on some of the games, and that's worthwhile. But there are a lot of YouTube channels that are devoted to games. And you may think that mine is devoted to games because I mention games every 3 or 4 videos, excuse me. But mine is not devoted to games the way some of these channels are. So that's how to get at it. That's how to really learn what's out there in terms of games. If you have particular games that you're interested in, whether I've played them or know anything about them or know how to find out about them, I'd love to hear about it. In particular, I think that our stage of game playing in my circle of people is we like games that don't take forever, that maybe take an hour, and that have enough complexity that it's worth playing them multiple times, many times over the course of some months. But simple enough that if somebody new to the game wanted to join, we'd be able to explain it fairly well. Examples of that, Dominion in the base set and maybe Prosperity Expansion, it's pretty simple. I think Seven Wonders is easy to learn especially if you're playing with people who've played it before. And another example. Yeah, those would be board games, some examples of board games. Some of the ones I've shown before that are sort of geography-esque games like Africa and Tikal in Australia. Those games are possibly simple enough for my set to play. Simultaneous turns is really good, and cooperative games can be a really good way to play with somebody new to the game, except that the tendency and the danger in cooperative games is for the people who know how to play it, who've played it before, to dominate the decision making. So that's not fun, really, necessarily. So that's the most of the variety show. The other thing I'll say is that I'm going to be going with my friend Cindy of Galloping Horse Quilting to our local quilt store in Cary this afternoon to get some fabric that I need for some things I'm working on. And she's designing a quilt, or she's decided not to design a quilt. I think she's going to pick out fabric for a quilt that she bought a pattern for. And we're going to have dinner and play games because it's my birthday. And what else? Oh, tomorrow we're going to see our son and daughter-in-law in where they now live in extreme eastern Tennessee, and see my brother there who'll be visiting them. And next week in the video, will I make a video next week? Yes, I will. I hope to have something, a blast from the past type object to show. I expect I will. So that is my video for this week. I hope that you found something interesting, and I hope that you're enjoying your stitching or your outdoor activities. It's going to be 90 today here, so I won't be spending a lot of time outdoors. Games. Pick out a game for your family to play this weekend, and I hope that you are doing well. And many blessings to you, friends.